Hello, and welcome to another episode of Bare Bones Wargaming, a show with no bells, no whistles, no frills, just a man, a camera, and his game. On today's episode, we are going to wrap up this turn of a solo play of The Fires of Midway, published by Clash of Arms Games, designed by Stephen Cunliffe. Alright, now, basically what we have left to do here now, after all this battling that went on, again, for those of you who might not have seen this before, the Zuikaku is aflame, the Hiryu is aflame. The two CVLs are okay, but they lost a lot of planes. And the American carriers, again, I've never had this happen before, they are all sitting pretty. Woohoo! Funny thing is, when I initially set this up, I kind of put my one carrier up there that was by itself near the squall, thinking if it had to go hide there, it could. But all I'm going to focus on here now is the end of turn cleanup, and then that'll be that for this series of videos, because again, my intention is just to give you the overview and flavor of how the game is played, so that way you can decide whether you'd like to track it down. Okay, so starting here with this last one, first thing we do is any full strength carriers that have their bulkhead marker on the last step get flipped. So the Zuikaku here is going to get flipped. Now, any damage counters will carry over. So the Zuikaku gets flipped, it's crippled. So I'll flip it over there. It is crippled. And now I come over here, and it gives the US a victory point. Woohoo! And now we turn it over to the other side, which means, of course, with all these fires blazing away, it is possible that the Zuikaku may sink this turn. We shall see. So once that's done, once you have the cards flipped over for all the ones that reach the end. Now notice the Hiryu doesn't have to do that because, excuse me, because the Hiryu is in the middle spot. If it was on the last spot, it would have done the same thing. That's why I was trying so desperately last episode to try and hit it again with another critical hit, because that would have been great to push it along like that. So now we go through the part here that's the explosion test. And basically what you're going to do here is we are going to roll a number of dice equal to all the damage on the carrier and compare it to this number up here where the 4 is. And anything that is equal to or greater than that will cause more damage. And if this bulkhead counter makes it to the end, bye Zuikaku. So we total up here, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 dice. I don't even know if I have 14 dice to roll. Whew. Let's see. What do I got here? 2, because I always have, as you can see here, I just do this to make it easy to recover them. And then I've got this pile here. So let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Need 5 more. Well, I guess I do have that many. 2, 3, 4, 5. 14 dice. Whew, that's a lot of dice. Okay. Now, since it is so many, I think what we'll do is we'll do 7 at a time. So 2, 4, 6, maybe. 7. Alright, so we got a 4, a 5, and a 6. So that's 3 hits. So the Zuikaku goes all the way down to step 6 there, the sinking fast portion of it. So after the explosion test, if it's on the 6 box, it is indeed removed from play. So bye-bye Zuikaku. The Zuikaku has been sunk. It is out of play. And that's 2 more victory points for the United States. And of course, since this is a campaign game I'm playing, that also means that the Zuikaku will not be available again for anything, and all the planes head into the watery grave. Now we got to do the Hiryu. Now the Hiryu is in much better shape. The Hiryu only has to roll 5 dice, and of course, of its 5, 2, 4, 5, of its 5 dice, if it gets it up to the ruptured step there, then it would end up getting flipped over, so it would be crippled. And while we're rolling that, let's give 2 more victory points to the USN for that. Now, the Hiryu was very lucky. It only rolled 1 hit that was equal to or greater than its damage number, which is a 4. So it does move up 1, which is bad news because that does mean that it is now ruptured. So after the explosion test, if it's in that position, you gotta flip it. So the U.S. then's about to pick up a second victory point. And again, any damage counters go back. So they're going to have to basically do even more repairs at this point. Okay? Now, if any carrier were to sink, like the Hiryu here, if it had been the one that was sinking, then the cap would attempt to be rescued. But since it is still afloat, the cap will still exist at this point. Now, one thing to mention here in the rules is American carriers, because of the damage control ability that the U.S. had, you actually get to re-roll any explosion dice that you like. Japanese, you can't do that with because their damage control procedures and elements were not as effective as the U.S. then. Okay? Now, air wing loss. What I'm going to do next here is total up how many planes are in the watery grave for each side. Now, the U.S. has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So nothing there for the U.S. Every 7 planes that the U.S. loses, that's another victory point for the IJN. The Japanese, on the other hand, have 1, 2, 3, if I can hold them, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yikes. Now, I say yikes because for every set of 5 that the Japanese have, the U.S. gets 2 more victory points. Woo! So the U.S. is all the way up to 8 VP at this point. Now, once that's been done, then the players that then can decide whether they wish to retreat or not. Okay? If the confident player, aka the one ahead in victory points, chooses to retreat first, he would actually lose some victory points. But of course, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I have 8 VP versus the Japanese 1. That's all they had because they had this. Honestly, has been the most lopsided battle I've done of this game ever. Usually, the Japanese, because they get to move first a lot of times, they get lucky with that, and of course, their fuel ratings are much better. They're able to clobber the USN. But this time, whew. Again, I've never had one like this before. Now, quite frankly, this is going to be the end of this battle because if I was the Japanese player, there's no way I would stick around. I got a big carrier that's smoking. I've got 2 CVLs that have lost some aircraft. No. So, this gives you the full turn. This completes the full turn. Now you go back to the carrier turn. You don't go back to the search and stuff. The search is only done one time. Nothing like that is done. And I should say you go back to the strategy one. You get your new cards. You get to move and stuff if you wish. Now, one last thing here, just to show you. Let me open this up here. And again, there's lots of scenarios if you wish. As you can see here, lots of details and stuff. Gives you the whole full lineup if you wish to do it. There's some advanced rules. The only thing, the one ding I have about this game, quite frankly, is this part. See, the full color rulebook here is pretty good. And it's got examples, it's pretty awesome and stuff, but it doesn't have this page inside. That just seems a little odd to me that you would include the combat card icons in this other booklet. You know, same thing with all this here too. All the information about all these cards and stuff. I don't know. It's just, I just personally feel it's an odd choice. I mean, these should have been pages at the end of the rulebook, in my opinion. But again, that's just my opinion. You also have some alternate history scenarios, if you're interested in that, including the final countdown scenario, which you can also find on the game carrier, which I also own too. So, and then you have the campaign game. Okay, it'll show you how to do all that stuff with the campaign, how to return to port, how to get yourself all fixed up again, and can't seem to grab pages today. It gives you charts to roll on. It also gives you air wings that you can put together as well too. And then on the back is a page that can be photocopied for convenience sake that lists all the carriers, and then as you go along for the 4 battles. And again, you can either go historical, as you can see it's labeled there, Coral Sea, Midway, Eastern Solomons, and Santa Cruz, or you could just do 4 hypothetical, which is what I like to do, because I mean the history is fun, it's interesting, it's fascinating, but I mean, I'm more interested in seeing how things might have played out. I mean, let's face it. I mean, some people are very deterministic. Oh, America would have won the war no matter what, the production capacity, et cetera, et cetera. But I think folks sometimes forget that willpower, and not only just, production, but the application of it. Professor Michael Myers' book, Contingent Victory about the Pacific, has a great chapter about all the things the U.S. and the Allies had to do to basically maximize their efficiency and their potential in order to beat the Japanese. This wasn't a done thing. I mean, I just can't believe that if indeed, the U.S. had lost, let's say, another carrier at Coral Sea, both Yorktown and Lexington, and then if they had turned around and what if the U.S. had been the one to lose 2 or 3 carriers at Midway? That might have been a little different. The other thing, too, is you got to remember in 1943, it took basically most of that year to climb the chain to go up the Solomons and stuff towards Rabaul. I mean, that's a whole year-long process. Now, granted, the distances of the Pacific are vast, but yeah. So anyway, didn't mean to get off on a tangent there. But part of the reason I like this game is it's fast as furious, and it does give the essence of carrier warfare. Well, let's face it. The essence of carrier warfare in 1942 was basically a big game of Marco Polo. There's that story at the Coral Sea about how the Japanese launched that late strike on the second day of the battle, and because there was cloud cover, they flew above the clouds and they missed the U.S. carriers underneath. And in the gathering darkness, what if they had found them? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could have happened. But again, I like this because whether you play it with a 2-player game with the cards and you're swapping and stealing and all doing that kind of stuff, or whether you're doing it with my solo method here, the uncertainty of it, who gets to launch, first is what the most is kind of thing, becomes critical. So I just end this video by just kind of summarizing real quick my solo ideas for those folks who do like to play solo or need to play solo, whichever it happens to be. I personally, I just enjoy it because I enjoy the game experience. I'm not so much into the competition, which is kind of ironic because I am a competitive person. But that's another story for another time, as they say at the end of Conan the Destroyer. So real quick, just my little solo things and some of the big solo things here that come with the game. You've got the search grid, which you can see in video number 1 of this, part 1. You've got the solo decks that the Japanese have. And again, what I do is I roll a d6 and a 1. They don't get to use a card simulating, like if it was a real opponent that didn't have a card in their hand. Because otherwise, then it does kind of give the Japanese an edge, in my humble opinion. And then, of course, the other thing, perhaps the big thing with the solo part, is my assigning of the different colored dice to each carrier, and then high die roll gets to go first. And that, again, simulates kind of the uncertainty. Because if you're playing solo and, you deal these cards out, as soon as you see what they are, it's like, well, okay, you can start to, plan a little better. And, I just think it increases the uncertainty of it all. So anyway, that's a wrap for this particular playthrough. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it gave you some good ideas and or gave you a good idea how this game is played. I'm sorry the 2 videos got lost. I am really, really bummed about that. Partly because I had such great American attacks. And again, usually in this game, in my campaign games, it ends up being 1 or 2 victory points at the end. They're usually tight. And usually the U.S. is getting pounded pretty bad at the beginning. So this was a very atypical experience for me. So if you have any questions or comments about the game overall, you can go ahead and put them down in the comments section, and I'll be glad to answer anything that I can. So, for the Fires of Midway replay here, this is Tim Korchnoi from Bare Bones Wargaming, signing off, wishing you victory and good times in your games. I'll see you next time. Not sure which game I'm going to do next, but I have to be honest, what I'm starting to think about doing here is I'm starting to think about going through my magazine collection and choosing some magazine games that don't have any videos, haven't really got a whole lot of attention, so the people can decide, because magazine games, let's be honest here, they're mostly hit and miss. So, I take chances at times based on the topics, and I've got a lot of magazine games. You can see all those boxes there. A lot of those are magazine games. Not all of them, but most of them are, because, well, if they had their own boxes, they'd be in their own boxes now, wouldn't they? But I think I'm going to do that just to give some ideas and some feels. with some of them. Some popular magazine games like Crete 1941 has a great video by Stuka Joe. If you know him, you can check his channel out. He does a fantastic job, much more polished than yours truly on videos. And games like that already have a really cool video, I'm not going to try and replicate things when someone's already done an excellent playthrough or instructional type of video. I'm basically going to go after the ones that don't have that. So that'll be my next plan. I'm not sure where I'll go just yet, but I have to be honest, for those of you who might be subscribers, I am kind of leaning towards the Midway Solitaire. That game came out last year. That game has some issues, but it's a cool design. It's a very interesting setup. So I may tinker around with that and then shoot a video of that at some point. I'm on a Pacific Theater kick right now, riding a wave, if you will, getting a bunch of Pacific Theater games in. So, okay, anyway, I was supposed to sign off, I know, like a minute ago, but that's just kind of my closing thoughts here. So again, I hope to see you again, next videos and stuff. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.